Welcome to the Core Stream. The BYE podcast presents Matrix. Complexity reduced to logic, structured elements.
BYE Matrix, Episode 8, Sight, Light, Refraction, and the Architecture of Color. Welcome back to the BYE Matrix. If you have returned for this 8th transmission, you have accepted the rigorous parameters of this deep tech immersion. Today, we bypass the philosophical abstractions and interface directly with the fundamental operating system of the universe, optical physics and biological transduction. We are not here to simply admire beauty, we are here to comprehend the structural logic that dictates form, function, and the perception of the electromagnetic spectrum. Prepare for a high-velocity download of absolute precision. The threshold has been crossed. BYE Matrix is now active. Right. Strap the pack on. This one is heavy. Today we are dismantling the single most trusted sense you own, vision, and showing you that almost none of what it hands you is the unfiltered truth. Color, as you experience it, does not exist out there in the world. It is manufactured, on the fly, inside your skull, from a razor-thin slice of electromagnetic radiation. Everything else, the rainbow arching over a motorway, the shimmer on a beetle's back, the lake that is not there on the horizon of a desert road, is the output of physics colliding with biology, and biology cutting corners wherever it can get away with it. We are covering the electromagnetic spectrum and why visible light is a rounding error, refraction and the refractive index, dispersion and the precise geometry of a rainbow, mirages, angle-dependent structural color, the wiring of the retina, achromatopsia and the various color blindnesses, and finally the contested science of color-correcting filters. Buckle in. Light is electromagnetic radiation, a self-propagating oscillation of electric and magnetic fields, requiring no medium, traveling at a fixed velocity in a vacuum, roughly 299,792,458 meters per second. What distinguishes radio waves from X-rays from the light hitting your retina right now is purely wavelength, or equivalently, frequency. Wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional. Stretch the wave out, and you lower its frequency and its energy, compress it, and you raise both. The visible spectrum, the band your cone cells can transduce into a nerve signal, spans roughly 380 to 700 nanometers. That is an almost insultingly narrow window. Below it lies ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma. Above it lies infrared, microwave, radio. You are, quite literally, blind to the overwhelming majority of the electromagnetic environment you are sitting in right now. BC into the ultraviolet. Certain snakes detect infrared thermal radiation directly through pit organs. Your full-color vision is a parochial, species-specific hack. When light crosses a boundary between two media of different optical density, air to water, air to glass, its velocity changes, and if it strikes that boundary at an angle other than 90 degrees, its direction changes too. That is refraction. It is fully described by Snell's law, which relates the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction to the refractive indices of the two media. The refractive index of a medium is, in essence, a ratio, the speed of light in a vacuum divided by its speed inside that medium. Water sits at roughly 1.33. Ordinary glass sits somewhere around 1.5. Diamond is up near 2.4, which is precisely why diamonds are so aggressively brilliant. Light entering a diamond slows dramatically and bends sharply, and a large share of it undergoes total internal reflection before it finally escapes, producing that characteristic fire and sparkle. Refractive index is not a single, fixed number for a given material, though, and that fact is the entire foundation of everything that follows. The refractive index of a transparent medium varies slightly with wavelength. Shorter wavelengths, blue and violet, bend more than longer wavelengths, red and orange, when passing through the same material. This wavelength-dependent bending is called dispersion, and it is the mechanism a prism exploits to fan ordinary or white sunlight out into its constituent spectral components. White light was never white. It was always a superposition of every visible wavelength traveling together, and dispersion simply unpicks that superposition. This is precisely the mechanism behind the rainbow, and here the geometry gets satisfyingly exact. Sunlight strikes a spherical raindrop. It refracts on entry, reflects once off the inner back surface of the droplet, and refracts again on exit. Because of dispersion, that double refraction sends red light out at a slightly different angle than blue light. When you sum this across the geometry of a spherical drop, the light does not emerge uniformly, it concentrates sharply around a minimum deviation angle. For red light, that concentration sits at roughly 42 degrees from the antisolar point, the point directly opposite the sun, marked by the shadow of your own head. For violet, the concentration angle is slightly smaller, around 40 degrees. That is the primary bow, red on the outside, violet on the inside, and it is why you can only ever see a rainbow when the sun is behind you and reasonably low in the sky. Once solar elevation exceeds about 42 degrees, the geometry pushes the entire arc below your horizon. A secondary bow, fainter and with its color order inverted, forms from light undergoing two internal reflections rather than one, concentrating around 50 to 51 degrees. Between the two arcs lies a visibly darker band of sky, Alexander's dark band, a genuine deficit of scattered light, since the geometry that produces the primary and secondary bows leaves that intermediate angular region underpopulated with returning rays. None of this is subjective. It is a fully solved problem in physical optics, and the numbers 42, 50, 51 degrees are as reproducible as anything in engineering. A mirage is not an illusion in the sense of a cognitive trick, it is a real, physically caused, photographable event. It is only unreal in that it misrepresents the location of the object producing it. The refractive index of air is not fixed either, it depends on air density, and density depends on temperature. On a hot road surface, or across open desert sand, the air immediately above the ground can be dramatically hotter, and therefore less dense, than the air a meter or two higher up. That creates a vertical gradient in refractive index. Light traveling from the sky at a shallow angle towards the ground encounters progressively faster air as it descends, and it curves, continuously refracting rather than reflecting off any single surface, until it bends back upward into your eye. Your brain, hardwired on the assumption that light travels in straight lines, projects that curved ray backwards in a straight line and concludes the sky is coming from the ground itself. The result, a shimmering wet patch that reads as standing water because a patch of sky refracted upward from ground level looks exactly like a reflection off a liquid surface would. This is called an inferior mirage. The false image sits below the true position of the object. A superior mirage does the reverse, produced by a temperature inversion, cold air trapped beneath warmer air, common over cold seas, bending light downward and making distant objects, ships, coastlines, appear lifted above the horizon, sometimes grotesquely stretched or inverted. Fata Morgana, the complex, multiply-layered superior mirage sometimes reported at sea, is the same physics compounded across several refracting layers. Some color is chemical, a pigment absorbs certain wavelengths and reflects others, and that color is stable regardless of your position. But a large amount of the most spectacular color in nature is structural, not chemical, and it changes depending on the angle you view it from. Peacock feathers, the shells of certain beetles, the inside of an abalone shell, oil films on wet tarmac, soap bubbles, none of these rely primarily on pigment. Instead, they contain microscopic periodic structures, thin films, or stacked layers, with dimensions on the same order as the wavelength of visible light. Light reflecting off the top of such a layer and light reflecting off the layer just beneath it travel slightly different path lengths before recombining, and depending on that path length difference relative to the wavelength, different wavelengths interfere constructively or destructively. Change your viewing angle, and you change the effective path length difference, and therefore which wavelength gets reinforced. That is why a peacock feather shifts from blue-green to bronze as you tilt it, and why a soap bubble cycles through color as it thins and as you move your head. This phenomenon is called iridescence, and its mathematics is identical to that of thin film interference in any optics textbook. Human color vision is trichromatic. The retina carries two functional photoreceptor families, rods, extremely sensitive to light intensity but colorblind, dominant in low light and peripheral vision, and cones, responsible for color and fine detail, requiring considerably more light to function well. There are three cone types, conventionally labeled by the wavelength region where their sensitivity peaks: long, L, peaking toward red-orange, medium, M, peaking toward green, and short, S, peaking toward blue-violet. Color perception is not each cone reporting its color independently. It is a comparative, differential process. Downstream neural circuitry compares the relative activation across the three cone types and constructs, from that ratio, everything you experience as hue. This is opponent process coding, a red-green channel derived from the L versus M difference, a blue-yellow channel derived from S against the combined L plus M signal, and a separate luminance channel from L plus M summed. Color, in other words, is not a direct readout of wavelength, it is an inference, computed from a three-number comparison. If one cone type is entirely missing, or present but mistuned, that comparative computation degrades or collapses along a specific axis, and the deficiency pattern maps directly onto which cone is affected. Protanopia is the complete absence of functioning L-cones. The red-green axis collapses, and reds are perceived as notably darker, sometimes confused with dark browns or black. Deuteranopia is the complete absence of functioning M-cones, also a red-green deficiency, but here brightness is generally better preserved than in protanopia, even though the red-green confusion itself is comparably severe. Protanomaly and deuteranomaly are the milder cousins of the above. The relevant cone is present but its spectral sensitivity is shifted, producing reduced rather than absent discrimination. These red-green deficiencies collectively are by far the most common, overwhelmingly X-linked, and therefore disproportionately affect males. Commonly cited figures put it around 8% of men of Northern European descent versus roughly 0.5% of women. Tritanopia is the complete absence of functioning S-cones, a blue-yellow deficiency, extremely rare, not X-linked, and affecting men and women equally. Blues are confused with greens, yellows with violets. Tritanomaly is its milder counterpart. Achromatopsia is the deepest of these failures, a rare, typically autosomal recessive condition in which all three cone types fail to function, leaving vision dependent entirely on rods. The result is total color blindness, the world reduced to luminance alone, shades of gray, frequently accompanied by photophobia and nystagmus, since a retina built around rod-dominant function copes very poorly with bright daylight. There is currently no pharmacological treatment, management centers on low vision aids and genetic counseling, though gene therapy approaches have shown promise in animal models. This is where the segment needs to be handled with real intellectual honesty, because there is a commercial product line, most visibly Enchroma, marketed specifically to people with red-green color vision deficiency, and the gap between the marketing claim and the peer-reviewed measurement is worth dissecting carefully, because it is a textbook case of engineering plausibility outrunning empirical validation. The underlying mechanism is a multi-notch optical filter, lenses that block specific narrow bands of wavelength, on the theoretical premise that this will re-widen the separation between the overlapping spectral sensitivities of the L and M cones in someone with anomalous, not absent, cone function, thereby increasing the effective contrast the opponent process system has available to work with. The manufacturer's claims have, at various points, suggested that glasses can meaningfully enhance red-green discrimination without compromising overall color accuracy. Independent studies tell a considerably more mixed story. A University of Granada study published in Optics Express concluded the filters do not grant colorblind wearers access to new colors at all, rather, they shift which colors are distinguishable, improving separation along one axis at the direct expense of confusing colors that were previously distinguishable, essentially trading one discrimination problem for a different one, comparable in principle to any narrowband tinted eyewear used for a specific visual task, such as shooting or hunting glasses. A 2020 University of California, Davis study on Enchroma filters found no clear improvement in standard colorblindness test scores across most tasks and subgroups, some improvement restricted specifically to protanopic participants on one task, an active impairment in color naming for certain hues such as cyan. A broader systematic review and meta-analysis similarly reported no clinical proof of the advertised restoration of color vision, while noting a measurable, but narrower, effect on color identification accuracy specifically, which is a materially different claim from curing or correcting color blindness. So the accurate, defensible position, the one an engineer should hold rather than the one a marketing department holds, is this: multi-notch filters demonstrably alter color appearance and can, for some individuals, particularly those with milder anomalous trichromacy rather than true dichromacy, produce a modest, task-specific improvement in discrimination, at a cost to other aspects of color perception. They do not restore normal trichromatic vision, they do not grant new photoreceptor sensitivity, and the manufacturer's own disclaimers, that the product is not a cure and not designed to improve colorblindness test scores, sit in some tension with the emotionally charged marketing built around viral videos of users reacting to the glasses. Genuine accessibility engineering, in the broader sense, high-contrast color palettes, redundant non-color coding such as patterns or labels alongside color in interface design, software-based color remapping calibrated to an individual's specific deficiency profile, currently rests on considerably firmer empirical ground than tinted eyewear does. So, light is a sliver of a much vaster spectrum. Color is not a property of objects but a computed comparison across three cone channels. Refraction bends that light with mathematical precision, sometimes precise enough to hang a rainbow at exactly 42 degrees from your own shadow, sometimes precise enough to fake a lake out of superheated air. Some of the most striking color in the natural world is not pigment at all but geometry, interference patterns changing with the angle of your skull. And when the three-channel system itself is faulty, from mild anomalous trichromacy through to total achromatopsia, the fixes on the market range from genuinely useful software-side accommodations to optical filters whose real-world benefit is considerably more modest than their advertising suggests. That is the weight for this leg of the march. Keep your eyes, such as they are, open. Now that the comment section is open on YouTube, I explicitly invite you all to share your analytical reactions, conceptual ideas, and specific technical requests in the space below. Let us maintain and advance this ongoing conversation with deep, mutual respect for each individual's cognitive development and language learning journey. Keep boosting your English. Bye for now.
Ready to boost your English?